There is something different about the way your mind works. You've known it since you were young, the way you could see the flaw in an argument before it was fully spoken, the way conversations felt slow, almost heavy, because you had already traced every possible outcome while everyone else was still reacting. You learned to stay quiet about it, to blend in, to pretend the noise didn't exhaust you. But here's the truth. That friction you feel isn't a flaw. It's awareness. The Stoics believed that clarity is rare because most people are ruled by impulse, emotion, and borrowed opinions. Stoics believed that the soul becomes dyed by the color of its thoughts. If that's true, then a mind that questions itself, that refuses easy certainty, that seeks depth over applause, is not broken, it is disciplined. And discipline always feels lonely before it feels powerful. If you're someone who values truth over comfort and growth over validation, then you're already walking a Stoic path, whether you call it that or not. Also consider subscribing as a commitment to sharpening your mind, strengthening your character, and choosing awareness in a world that rewards distraction. Most people reach a conclusion and defend it like property. They protect it, they polish it, they build their identity around it as if changing it would mean losing a piece of themselves. But you do something different. Before your opinion ever leaves your mouth, it has already survived interrogation. You've attacked it from every angle. You've tested it. You've looked for cracks in its logic the way an engineer stress tests steel before trusting it to hold weight. There is a quiet courtroom inside your mind, and your own ideas are put on trial before anyone else ever hears them. This is not insecurity, it is discipline. Carl Jung once said, "Thinking is difficult, that's why most people judge." You know this instinctively. It is easier to defend a belief than to examine it. It is easier to be certain than to be accurate, yet you care more about being right in reality than being right in public. That choice shapes everything about how your mind operates. Psychologists call the tension you willingly endure cognitive dissonance. It is the discomfort that arises when two opposing beliefs collide inside the same skull. Most people rush to escape that discomfort. They grab the first explanation that feels stable and cling to it so they can breathe again. You don't. You sit in the contradiction. You let it stretch you. You allow two conflicting ideas to exist long enough for truth to surface. It does not feel pleasant. It feels like pressure building behind the eyes, like a knot tightening in the chest. But you have learned that clarity is often born from friction. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will gladly change." That willingness to revise yourself is not weakness. It is strength sharpened by humility. You are not loyal to your first thought. You are loyal to what survives scrutiny. From the outside, this can look like hesitation. People may think you are slow to decide, unsure of yourself, or overly cautious. They mistake your internal audit for doubt. In reality, you refuse to commit cheaply. You know that beliefs shape actions, and actions shape lives. So you do not allow a belief to guide you unless it has endured pressure. That is why, when you finally speak, your words carry weight. They have been filtered. They have been tested. They are not reactions. They are conclusions that survived resistance. Seneca once reminded his students, "It is the power of the mind to be unconquerable. An unconquerable mind is not one that never questions itself. It is one that is not afraid of self-examination. You have built that resilience quietly, without applause, through countless silent debates no one else ever witnessed. Over time, this habit changes how you relate to certainty itself. You begin to see how fragile many opinions are, how quickly they collapse when lightly challenged. You notice how often people defend ideas not because they are true, but because they are attached to them. That awareness does not make you arrogant. If anything, it makes you cautious. You understand how easy it is to be wrong. Epictetus put it simply, "It is impossible for a person to learn what he thinks he already knows." That sentence sits at the core of your thinking. As long as you keep questioning yourself, you remain teachable. And as long as you remain teachable, your mind keeps growing sharper. There is also a deeper effect. When you repeatedly dismantle your own assumptions, you slowly detach your identity from your opinions. You stop seeing disagreement as a threat. You begin to treat ideas like tools rather than trophies. If a better tool appears, you replace the old one without drama. This flexibility is rare because it requires ego to step aside. It requires admitting that yesterday's version of you did not have all the answers. Yet every time you update your thinking, you feel something subtle and steady, not embarrassment, not loss. A quiet alignment, as if something inside you has moved closer to truth. That alignment becomes addictive. It is cleaner than approval. It is stronger than validation. This is why you argue with yourself before you argue with anyone else. You are not trying to win conversations. You are trying to refine perception. The debate inside your head is not chaos. It is calibration. And the more you practice it, the more precise your judgments become. You start noticing gaps in reasoning faster. You become less vulnerable to manipulation because you already anticipate counter-arguments. You grow comfortable with complexity because you have trained your mind to hold tension without collapsing into oversimplified answers. That comfort with tension becomes a foundation. It prepares you for deeper layers of thought, for recognizing patterns others overlook, for navigating conversations without being swept away by noise. It sets the tone for everything else about how you think, and it quietly confirms what you may have suspected for years. If you live this way, your mind is not ordinary. It is unusually sharp. You get bored in conversations that captivate everyone else, not because you believe you are above anyone, not because you lack patience or kindness. It happens because your mind moves ahead of the narrative before it finishes unfolding. Someone begins telling a story, and within seconds you see the ending. Someone builds an argument, and you have already located the weak point before they even reach it. You sit there waiting, not out of arrogance, but because your brain has quietly leaped 3 steps forward. It is a strange experience, almost invisible to others. They are leaning in, reacting, laughing at the right moments. You are already at the destination, watching them take the long road. That waiting creates a subtle isolation. You nod, you maintain eye contact, you respond at the right time. On the surface, you are fully present, but inside, your thoughts have started to branch out. They connect the current topic to a book you read months ago. They link it to a problem you have been analyzing privately. They detect patterns between this conversation and another one you had years earlier. It does not feel like distraction. It feels like your mind refusing to idle. Aristotle once observed, "The whole is greater than the sum of its parts." Your mind naturally searches for that whole. It gathers fragments of information and assembles them into something larger, something more coherent than the moment itself. Research on processing speed supports what you have sensed intuitively. People who recognize patterns quickly often experience restlessness during routine interactions. Their brains complete the visible puzzle early, so they begin working on hidden ones. This is not impatience, it is overflow. When your cognitive capacity is not fully engaged by the current input, it reallocates itself to more complex tasks in the background. That is why you can listen to someone speak while simultaneously analyzing the structure of their argument, the emotional tone beneath their words, and the possible long-term consequences of what they are saying. Your mind layers information instead of absorbing it in a single stream. Over time, this pattern shapes how you relate to social life. You may start to question yourself. You might wonder why ordinary exchanges feel thin or repetitive. You may worry that something is wrong with you because you crave conversations that go deeper, faster, further. But this hunger for density is not a flaw. It is a sign of how your mind operates. Socrates famously said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." You feel that instinctively. Surface-level talk can feel like a script repeated too many times. You are drawn toward meaning, toward analysis, toward the quiet architecture beneath simple words. There is also a creative side to this habit. When your mind wanders during slow conversations, it is not empty. It is building. It connects ideas across disciplines. It blends personal experience with abstract theory. It generates possibilities. Carl Jung once wrote, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." When others are absorbed in the outer narrative, your awareness often turns inward, exploring connections that are not immediately visible. That inward movement is not disengagement, it is construction. It is the mind refining its internal map while the external world moves at a slower pace. Still, this ability carries a cost. You may struggle to feel fully synchronized with those around you. Moments that energize others may leave you neutral or quietly fatigued. You might find yourself longing for fewer conversations but deeper ones, and that longing can make you question whether you are too serious, too analytical, too intense. Yet intensity is often simply focus applied consistently. Your mind treats even casual conversations as beginnings. It immediately scans for direction, for depth, for where this exchange could lead. When it senses there is no deeper layer, it quietly shifts its attention elsewhere. This shift is rarely visible. You have learned to mask it. You know how to respond, how to smile, how to stay socially aligned. But beneath that surface, you are running a different operating system. You are scanning for insight, for structure, for something that stretches you. When you find it, you light up. When you do not, your mind searches within. That search is not contempt for others. It is simply the natural rhythm of a brain tuned to complexity. Epictetus once reminded his students, "Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens." You cannot slow your processing speed to match every environment. What you can do is understand it. Recognize that your boredom is not emptiness. It is altitude. It signals that your baseline level of engagement is higher than the current setting. It invites you to seek conversations, ideas, and challenges that match your capacity rather than shrink yourself to fit the room. When you stop interpreting this restlessness as arrogance or defect, something shifts. You begin to choose your environments more carefully. You gravitate toward people who enjoy complexity. You invest your energy where it stretches rather than drains you. And gradually you understand that this pattern is not random. It is consistent. It reflects the same precision you apply when you debate yourself internally. It mirrors the same commitment to depth over simplicity. If you often find yourself mentally ahead of the moment, quietly assembling larger patterns while others remain focused on the immediate thread, that is not disconnection. It is confirmation. Your mind is operating at a different frequency, and that frequency, when understood rather than suppressed, is another quiet sign that it is unusually sharp. You change your mind without feeling humiliated. For many people, changing an opinion feels like losing a battle. It feels like weakness, like public surrender. They would rather defend a flawed position than endure the discomfort of admitting they were wrong. Their identity is welded to their beliefs, and any challenge to those beliefs feels like a personal attack. You have noticed this in conversations, the way voices rise, the way logic becomes secondary to pride. You see how quickly people protect an idea simply because it is theirs, but you separate the two. You understand that a belief is something you hold, not something you are. That small distinction changes everything about how your mind works. You have believed things passionately before. You have defended certain views with conviction. Then new evidence appeared. A better argument surfaced. A deeper understanding formed. And instead of shame, you felt something different. Clarity, relief. As if something that had been slightly out of place suddenly aligned. It did not feel like losing. It felt like upgrading. That sensation tells you something important about your thinking. You are not attached to being right in the moment. You are attached to being accurate over time. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If anyone can refute me, show me I'm making a mistake or looking at things from the wrong perspective, I'll gladly change." That is not the mindset of someone weak. It is the mindset of someone who values truth more than ego. This habit reflects what psychologists call cognitive flexibility. It is the ability to adjust your internal map when reality proves it incomplete. Many people resist this because it threatens their sense of stability. To admit error is to admit imperfection, and that can feel unbearable. But you have learned that resisting correction only delays growth. Seneca observed, "It is better to conquer our grief than to deceive it." In the same way, it is better to correct your thinking than to disguise its flaws. When you revise your beliefs, you are not betraying your past self. You are refining it. You allow yourself to evolve without turning that evolution into drama. There is also humility in this process, but it is not the kind that erases you. It is steady and grounded. You do not apologize for thinking deeply. You simply remain open to being wrong. Carl Jung once said, "We cannot change anything until we accept it." That applies not only to emotions but to ideas. When you accept that your understanding is always partial, you give yourself permission to grow. You do not cling to outdated views just because they once felt certain. You release them, and in that release, you make room for sharper insight. People may misinterpret this flexibility. They might think you are inconsistent or unreliable because you adjust your stance. But consistency is not the same as integrity. True integrity is alignment with reality, not loyalty to an outdated position. You are consistent in one way only. You are committed to what is true as far as you can see. That commitment makes your thinking precise. It allows you to move through complex situations without being trapped by yesterday's conclusions. Plato wrote, "Wise men speak because they have something to say, fools because they have to say something." You speak when your thoughts have been refined, and when refinement requires change, you change. Over time, this approach strengthens your judgment. You become less defensive, less reactive, more analytical. When someone challenges your view, you do not feel immediate hostility. You listen. You weigh their words against your own reasoning. Sometimes you remain firm. Sometimes you shift. Either way, the decision is deliberate. You carry that principle quietly. As long as you remain teachable, your mind continues to sharpen. The moment you declare yourself finished, growth stops. Treating your opinions as hypotheses rather than heirlooms creates a powerful internal freedom. You are not burdened by the need to appear unchanging. You can explore new ideas without fearing that they will dismantle your identity. This does not mean you drift aimlessly. It means you anchor yourself in evidence and reflection rather than pride. Each revision becomes a step forward, not a retreat. Each corrected error becomes proof that your mind is active and alert. This willingness to update yourself also affects how you relate to the world. You are less likely to fall into rigid camps, less likely to defend positions simply because they are popular or traditional. You evaluate claims carefully. You ask whether they withstand scrutiny, and if they do not, you let them go. That habit may isolate you at times, especially in environments where certainty is valued more than accuracy. But it also protects you from stagnation. You continue to evolve while others remain fixed. When you look back on your past beliefs, you do not feel embarrassed by how much they have changed. You feel grateful that they have. It means you were paying attention. It means you were learning. It means your mind refused to settle for convenience. In a world where many cling to ideas long after they have expired, your flexibility is rare. It keeps your thinking dynamic. It keeps your perception clear. And it quietly reinforces what these habits have been revealing all along. If you can change your mind without feeling diminished, your mind is not fragile. It is unusually sharp. You notice what's missing before you notice what's present. Walk into a room, and most people immediately catalogue what they see: the arrangement of furniture, the expressions on faces, the tone of the conversation, the obvious details. Your mind does something quieter and far less common. It registers the gaps, the person who should have been there but isn't, the shift in energy when you entered, the topic that was carefully avoided, the question hovering in the air that no one dared to ask. You are not searching for drama. You are not trying to expose anyone. You simply perceive the empty spaces as clearly as others see the objects themselves. Absence contains information. In visual art, negative space defines the shape of the subject. Without the empty areas around it, the image collapses into chaos. In human interaction, the same principle applies. What is left unsaid often reveals more than what is spoken aloud. You may notice when someone answers a question too quickly, or when a detail is skipped without explanation. You sense when a plan sounds complete, but something essential has been quietly omitted. That sensitivity is not imagination running wild. It is pattern recognition operating at a higher resolution. Carl Jung once wrote, "The most intense conflicts, if overcome, leave behind a sense of security and calm." To overcome conflict, you must first detect it. You must recognize the tension that others ignore. Your awareness of absence is the first step toward that calm clarity. This habit makes you difficult to mislead. When someone presents a polished argument, you instinctively examine what was excluded. When a narrative seems convincing, you ask yourself what evidence was not shown. It is not that you distrust everything. It is that you understand how easily people can frame reality by highlighting certain facts and hiding others. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Part of that power is learning to question the visible surface. When you focus on what is missing, you protect your mind from being shaped too easily by incomplete information. At times, this perception can feel isolating. Others may not understand why you hesitate when everything appears straightforward. They may think you are overanalyzing, but you are not creating problems. You are identifying structural weaknesses before they collapse. Seneca observed, "It is more fitting for a man to laugh at life than to lament over it." To laugh at life with wisdom, you must see its hidden contradictions. Your ability to sense the unspoken layer allows you to move through situations with a quiet advantage. You are rarely shocked by outcomes because you noticed the signs long before they became obvious. There is a mental discipline behind this. You have trained yourself, perhaps without realizing it, to scan for inconsistencies, a promise that does not match behavior, a confident statement that lacks supporting detail, a plan that ignores a crucial variable. Your mind fills in missing pieces the way a skilled architect sees the structure behind the walls. Plato once said, "Reality is created by the mind. We can change our reality by changing our mind." By examining absence, you refuse to let surface appearances dictate your perception. You reconstruct a fuller picture inside your own thinking, rather than accepting the first version presented to you. This way of seeing also shapes your relationships. You notice when someone's words and emotions do not align. You sense when a conversation avoids something important. You may even feel the weight of a silence that others dismiss. Epictetus advised, "Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it." You embody this philosophy of perception quietly. You do not announce every inconsistency you detect. You simply adjust your trust, your expectations, and your behavior based on what you observe. That restraint requires maturity. It is easier to confront immediately than to process patiently, but you choose patience because clarity matters more than reaction. Over time, you realize that your awareness of absence extends beyond conversations. It applies to opportunities as well. When evaluating a career path, you consider not only what it offers, but what it demands. When entering a commitment, you think about what will no longer fit into your life. You weigh trade-offs that others overlook. Aristotle noted, "Quality is not an act, it is a habit." Your habit of examining the unseen increases the quality of your decisions. You do not rely solely on what is presented. You account for what is concealed or forgotten. This habit does not make you cynical. It makes you thorough. There is a difference. Cynicism assumes deception. Thoroughness examines possibility. You understand that every system, every story, every plan has gaps. Some are harmless. Others are critical. By paying attention to absence, you reduce the chance of being blindsided. You become steady, less reactive, more deliberate. And although this perception can make you feel separate from those who operate only on visible details, it quietly strengthens your judgment. When you consistently notice what is missing before what is present, you operate with a depth that is hard to teach and even harder to measure. You see the structure beneath the surface. You read between lines without being told to. You navigate situations with a subtle awareness that others may not share. That awareness influences how you speak, how you trust, how you decide. It sharpens your understanding of reality in ways that are not dramatic, but deeply effective. And as these habits continue to reveal themselves, the pattern becomes clearer. A mind that perceives absence as information is not ordinary. It is attentive, disciplined, and unusually sharp. You feel exhausted after socializing, not because you dislike people, not because you are shy or incapable of conversation. In fact, you can be articulate, thoughtful, even engaging when you choose to be. The fatigue comes from something deeper. While words are being exchanged, your mind is not only listening to sentences, it is tracking tone shifts, subtle pauses, micro-expressions, and small inconsistencies between what is said and what is felt. You notice when someone smiles a fraction too late. You catch the brief flicker of doubt before confidence returns to their face. You register the tension behind a casual joke. Most people hear content. You hear context. At the end of a gathering, others may feel energized by connection. You often feel drained, as if you have been carrying something heavy. That weight is not emotional weakness, it is cognitive load. Your brain has been running multiple processes at once. It has been observing patterns in group dynamics, measuring sincerity, predicting reactions, and adjusting your own responses accordingly. You are not just participating in conversation. You are decoding it. That decoding requires effort. It is like running several programs in the background while trying to maintain a smooth interface on the surface. This kind of awareness does not turn off easily. Even when you try to relax, your perception continues scanning. You may notice who dominates the conversation and who withdraws. You may sense unresolved tension between two people across the table. You may detect that someone's enthusiasm is forced. These observations arrive automatically. Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." You are often making the unconscious visible in real time. You see beneath the surface, and that clarity takes energy. It demands attention that most people never expend. Because you perceive so much, you also adjust more. You might soften your tone to ease tension. You might steer a discussion away from conflict before it escalates. You might hold back a sharp insight to protect someone's pride. These small adjustments are invisible to others, but they accumulate inside you. By the time the evening ends, you have been managing more than just your own words. You have been navigating an entire emotional landscape. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." To maintain quality in a crowded mental environment requires effort. You are constantly filtering, evaluating, and choosing responses carefully. This is why solitude feels restorative rather than lonely. In quiet moments, your mind can rest from constant interpretation. There are no shifting expressions to analyze, no hidden meanings to uncover. The stillness allows your system to reset. Seneca once observed, To be everywhere is to be nowhere. When you are around many minds at once, your attention fragments. When you are alone, it gathers itself. That gathering restores clarity. It sharpens focus again. And it reminds you that your fatigue is not a flaw, but a sign of depth. You may have wondered at times whether something is wrong with you. Why do simple gatherings leave you so tired? Why does casual interaction feel like work? But if you look closely, the pattern reveals something else. You are processing layers that others skip. You are noticing the unsaid, the implied, the concealed. Aristotle noted, "The energy of the mind is the essence of life." Your mind expends energy generously in social settings. It moves quickly, mapping relationships and intentions. That energy expenditure is the cost of perception. There is also a protective element to this habit. Because you observe carefully, you are less likely to be manipulated. You sense when someone is being insincere. You detect when a narrative does not align with behavior. That awareness shields you, but it also means you rarely relax fully in crowded environments. Epictetus advised, "Be careful to leave your children a well-instructed rather than a rich father." In the same spirit, you leave conversations well-informed rather than simply entertained. You collect insight rather than impressions, and insight requires attention. Over time, you begin to accept that this exhaustion is a receipt. It proves that your mind was active at a level the room could not see. Most people leave with a memory of what was said. You leave with an internal blueprint of how it was said, why it was said, and what it might lead to. That blueprint guides your future interactions. It informs your trust. It refines your judgment. It strengthens your discernment. The fatigue fades, but the understanding remains. When you recognize this pattern, you stop labeling yourself as antisocial or overly sensitive. You understand that your mind operates at high resolution. High resolution always demands more processing power. That demand is not a defect. It is evidence of unusual sharpness. You do not simply experience social moments. You analyze them, integrate them, and learn from them. And although that depth can feel heavy at times, it quietly confirms what these habits continue to reveal. Your mind is not merely participating in the world around it. It is studying it, decoding it, and refining itself through every interaction. You are uncomfortable with your own intelligence. That surprises people. They assume that a sharp mind walks around with visible confidence, maybe even superiority. They expect certainty, clear answers, strong declarations. But you often feel the opposite. You feel the weight of complexity beneath simple statements. You hear a bold claim and immediately sense the layers it ignores. You see how many variables sit beneath what others call obvious. Instead of feeling powerful, you feel cautious. Not because you doubt your ability, but because you are aware of how much remains unknown. That awareness humbles you in a quiet way that others rarely understand. There is a psychological asymmetry at play here. Those who know very little in a subject often feel extremely confident. Their knowledge is small, so it looks complete from their point of view. There are no visible gaps because they have not yet explored enough territory to see them. As your understanding expands, the opposite happens. The perimeter of your knowledge grows, and with it, the border between what you know and what you do not know becomes larger. The more you learn, the more you recognize how much is left to learn. Socrates once said, "I know that I know nothing." That statement was not false modesty. It was the natural conclusion of deep inquiry. The deeper you go, the wider the horizon becomes. So when someone calls you smart, you may hesitate. You may smile politely, but internally you flinch. Not because you reject the compliment, but because you see the unfinished edges of your knowledge. You think about the questions you still cannot answer, the concepts you only partially grasp, the areas where your reasoning could still improve. This discomfort does not come from insecurity. It comes from perspective. Carl Jung wrote, "The more knowledge you have, the more you see how little you know. That realization does not diminish you. It sharpens you. It keeps you grounded. It protects you from arrogance. People sometimes mistake this humility for weakness. They might wonder why you do not assert yourself more boldly, but what they do not see is the internal discipline behind your restraint. You choose your words carefully because you know how easily ideas can be oversimplified. You resist speaking with absolute certainty because you understand how often certainty hides blind spots. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today." In a similar way, the greatest obstacle to clear thinking is the illusion of total knowledge. You refuse that illusion. You stay present with the limits of your understanding. This habit also influences how you approach learning. You do not chase information just to collect it. You pursue depth. You revisit concepts. You question your own interpretations. And when you realize you misunderstood something, you do not collapse into shame. You adjust. Seneca once observed, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." You do not want to waste time pretending to know more than you do, so you invest that time refining your thinking instead. You accept that growth requires acknowledging gaps. That acknowledgement keeps your mind flexible and alert. There is a quiet strength in this discomfort. It forces you to remain curious. It prevents stagnation. While others may cling to confident but shallow conclusions, you continue exploring. You ask deeper questions. You look for counter-arguments. You test your own assumptions. Epictetus advised, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." If you wish to be wise rather than merely informed, you must accept the discomfort that wisdom brings. That discomfort is not an error in your character. It is evidence that your cognitive map includes its own blind spots. A mind that is aware of its blind spots is far more resilient than one convinced it has none. When challenges arise, you are less likely to be shattered by correction. You expect that you might be wrong sometimes. That expectation makes you adaptable. It allows you to update your views without collapsing. It keeps you open to new information instead of defending outdated positions. This self-awareness may make you quieter in rooms filled with loud confidence, but it also makes your conclusions sturdier when you do speak. Over time, you begin to see this pattern clearly. Your discomfort with your own intelligence is not a sign that you lack it. It is calibration. It means your internal standards are high. It means you are measuring yourself against truth rather than applause. And while this awareness may prevent you from feeling effortlessly certain, it grants you something more valuable: precision. You move carefully. You think thoroughly. You remain teachable. In a world where many are satisfied with shallow understanding, your unease keeps you sharp. It ensures that your growth continues. And as these habits stack together, the picture becomes clearer. A mind that doubts itself in order to refine itself is not fragile. It is unusually sharp. You have a relationship with time that unsettles other people. You think about mortality, not in a dark or dramatic way, but with steady clarity. You understand that hours are non-renewable. Attention is finite. Energy spent carelessly cannot be reclaimed. While many move through their days as if tomorrow is guaranteed, you carry a quiet awareness that it is not. This awareness does not make you anxious. It makes you selective. It sharpens your sense of proportion. It forces you to weigh your actions against the limited currency of your life. Because of this, when someone pulls you toward drama, gossip, or endless arguments that lead nowhere, something inside you resists. It is not judgment. It is calculation. You measure the cost. You ask yourself whether this conversation deserves a portion of your limited existence. You consider the hours required, the emotional toll involved, the potential growth gained or lost. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." That line is not meant to frighten. It is meant to clarify. When you truly understand that time is finite, trivial matters lose their shine. You begin to treat each moment as something that must earn its place. This habit can make you appear distant. Others may think you are aloof or overly serious. They may not understand why you decline invitations without lengthy explanations. But you are not withdrawing from life. You are protecting it. That waste troubles you. You see how easily hours dissolve into distractions that add nothing to your growth or peace. So you choose carefully. You invest your time where it builds something, where it deepens understanding, where it aligns with your values. This relationship with time also affects your ambitions. You do not chase goals simply because they are impressive. You ask whether they are meaningful. You weigh long-term consequences against short-term rewards. You consider whether a pursuit is worth the years it may require. Epictetus advised, "How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself?" That question echoes quietly in your decisions. Demanding the best does not mean chasing status. It means refusing to settle for activities that drain you without purpose. Your awareness of mortality also shapes how you handle setbacks. When something fails, you assess it quickly. You do not cling to sunk costs out of pride. You ask whether continuing would honor your time or waste it. This strategic thinking is not coldness. It is realism. You recognize that every commitment carries an opportunity cost. Time spent in one place cannot be spent elsewhere. Carl Jung wrote, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart." Looking into your heart often means confronting how you are spending your days. When you see misalignment, you correct it. This clarity can feel intense to those who drift more casually. They may find your focus unsettling. They may wonder why you cut conversations short or leave gatherings early. But you are not rejecting people. You are guarding your inner economy. Plato observed, "The beginning is the most important part of the work." You treat each day as a beginning. You ask how it sets the tone for the life you are building. You do not want to scatter your attention so widely that nothing meaningful takes root. Over time, this habit deepens your sense of purpose. You become deliberate in relationships, choosing those that nourish growth. You become thoughtful in work, selecting paths that align with your principles rather than simply paying well. There is also a quiet peace in this approach. When you know that you are spending your time intentionally, regret loses its grip. You may not control outcomes, but you control investment. You know that your hours are placed where they matter most. That knowledge steadies you. It keeps distractions from dominating your schedule. It prevents resentment from building when others demand your attention without offering value in return. In the end, this relationship with time reveals something fundamental about your mind. You do not drift through existence. You measure it. You protect it. You use it as a compass. While others may chase every invitation, you weigh each one against your deeper goals. That precision is not rigidity. It is awareness applied consistently. It reflects a mind that understands scarcity and responds with discipline. When you combine this habit with the others you have recognized in yourself, a clear pattern emerges. You examine your own thoughts. You grow restless in shallow exchanges. You revise your beliefs without ego. You see what is missing. You process social dynamics deeply. You question your own intelligence. And you treat time as sacred. These are not random traits. They are interconnected signals of depth. A mind that values truth over comfort and purpose over distraction does not operate casually. It operates sharply. And when you live with that awareness, you move through the world not in haste, but with intention, guided by the quiet certainty that your life is limited and therefore precious. If you recognize yourself in these habits, understand something deeply. Your mind is not a burden. It is a responsibility. The clarity that isolates you is the same clarity that can build a life of precision, strength, and purpose. Do not dull it. Refine it. Do not shrink it. Direct it. There's another video on your screen that will help you channel this sharpness into something even more powerful.